Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're really getting into something fundamental. It's about self-mastery, about looking underneath the surface at those thoughts, those habits that just, well, hold us back.
That's right. There's this concept from some really influential work, calls them erroneous zones, these self-defeating patterns.
Erroneous zones, I like that term. And the idea we're exploring is that happiness, it isn't some complicated puzzle you have to solve.
Not at all. It's presented as, this natural state. Uncomplicated, really. But it hinges on taking responsibility, radical personal responsibility.
Okay, so our mission today, for you listening, is pretty clear. We want to show you how to maybe start dismantling these mental traps, the ones that keep you feeling stuck or defined by things that happened ages ago.
Exactly. And ultimately, how you can become the master of your present moment, not just reacting, but choosing.
But getting there means confronting how we think, right? How we filter information. There's a great story, as a sort of an anecdote, that highlights this perfectly.
Oh, yeah, the one about cognitive bias. It's classic. Shows how we hear what we, want to hear based on what we already believe.
Right. So imagine this. A speaker trying to show a group of alcoholics just how bad alcohol is. He sets up 2 jars.
One with plain water, the other with pure alcohol.
He drops a little earthworm into the water. What happens? It swims around, perfectly fine, happy little worm.
It's healthy, yeah.
Then he takes the same worm, drops it into the alcohol.
And poof, it just shrivels up, disintegrates right there. Pretty dramatic visual.
Very dramatic. The speaker's feeling pretty good about his demonstration. He pauses, looks at the crowd, asks, so what's the moral of this story?
Expecting them to say, wow, alcohol is destructive.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But instead, this voice pipes up from the back of the room.
Completely missing the intended point.
And says, I see. If you drink alcohol, you'll never get worms.
Laughs slightly. Precisely. It's not even about the alcohol, really. The point is we twist evidence. We reinterpret things to fit our existing narrative to justify staying right where we are.
So tackling these erroneous zones, these self-defeating thoughts, it's not easy. The sources say it takes real hard work.
Hard work, clear thinking. You need a sense of humor about yourself too, actually. And, crucially, a deep commitment to yourself.
The core idea being, happiness comes from taking responsibility for your choices, every single one.
That's the foundation.
Okay, so let's dive right into that foundation. Taking charge of yourself. And this starts with something pretty radical, I think. It challenges how we usually define intelligence.
It really does. The source material flat out argues that intelligence isn't primarily about, academic scores or how well you solve complex math problems or having a string of degrees.
Which is counterintuitive because society rewards those things, right?
Right.
We see someone with all the credentials, the PhDs, the fancy titles, and we automatically assume they must be wise or, intelligent.
Exactly. We're conditioned that way. But this perspective asks, well, if that's true intelligence, why isn't everyone with a high IQ living a joyful, effective life?
That's a good question, because they often aren't.
Right. The text makes a stark point. Mental hospitals are, unfortunately, filled with people who have those properly lettered credentials, high IQs, advanced degrees, but they can't manage their own emotional lives day to day.
So that kind of traditional intelligence, it can even lead to a sort of intellectual snobbery, but it doesn't guarantee happiness.
Not at all. It can yield really demoralizing results if it doesn't translate into actual personal well-being.
Okay, so if that's not the measure, what is? What's the true barometer of intelligence, according to this philosophy?
It's much simpler and much more profound, I think. Intelligence is measured by living an effective, happy life, day by day, moment by moment.
Living effectively and happily in the present.
Yes. The truly intelligent person has mastered the art of living. They understand deep down that their ability to stay happy, to feel worthy, it's completely separate from whether some external problem is solved right now.
Okay, wait, that feels huge. So even if I'm facing, a massive deadline or a difficult argument with someone or money worries, I can still choose to be happy.
You can choose happiness. Or, maybe more accurately sometimes, you can refuse to choose unhappiness. That's the key.
Refuse unhappiness.
That understanding is the ultimate weapon against what the text calls the NBD, the nervous breakdown. Because nerves don't actually break down.
Right.
People just lose their belief in their ability to choose their feelings. They start thinking their emotional state is totally dictated by outside events, by life's unavoidable bumps.
And that leads us straight into maybe the most challenging idea here. Feelings are choices, not accidents. not things that just happen to us.
It's incredibly radical because our whole culture, our language trains us otherwise.
Totally. How did the sources actually argue this?
Yeah.
How did they make the case that a feeling is a choice?
It's based on a logical progression. And once you sort of see it, it's hard to unsee. The premise is thoughts control feelings.
Okay.
You don't feel angry unless you first have an angry thought, right?
Yeah.
Or you interpret something as being anger-worthy. You don't feel sad without a sad thought preceding it.
Right. Makes sense.
So if thoughts control feelings, then logically, controlling your thoughts means you can control your feelings. It follows directly.
So if I'm constantly feeling unhappy or anxious or scared, it's because I'm choosing the thoughts that produce those feelings about whatever's going on.
That's the argument. You're choosing thoughts that lead to those emotional outcomes in response to people or events.
Wow. That completely flips the script on how we talk. Think about common phrases. You hurt my feelings.
Classic.
Or he makes me so mad. Or I can't help it, spiders just scare me.
Every single one of those phrases carries a hidden message, doesn't it? It says, I'm a victim here. My feelings are caused by something outside of me.
I'm not responsible.
Exactly. Someone or something else is pulling my emotional strings. The accurate versions, the self-responsible ones, sound really different. Almost awkward because we never say them.
Like what? What would be the accurate version of you hurt my feelings?
Something like, I chose to feel hurt based on the thoughts I had about what you said or did. Or, I'm making myself sick by replaying that situation in my head.
Instead of, he makes me sick.
Right. Or, I scare myself when I'm up high because I keep imagining falling. It's taking ownership, admitting you decided to be upset, which also means you can decide differently.
That is hard work, though. Replacing decades of that ingrained, culturally reinforced denial with this self-responsible logic.
It's the core work of becoming a free person, according to this view.
And if we don't do that work, if we keep believing our emotions are just these external accidents, that's when we get into trouble with what the source calls immobilization.
Yes, immobilization. And it's important to understand this isn't just about being totally frozen, unable to move.
It's a spectrum.
Exactly. It's defined as any state where you're not functioning at the level you'd like to be. That could range from complete inaction, yes, but also mild indecision, constant hesitation, putting things off.
So like the anger that stops me from saying what I need to say in a meeting.
Perfect example. Or the shyness that prevents you from walking up to someone interesting.
Or maybe jealousy that actually gives you physical symptoms, like high blood pressure.
Absolutely. Or worry that makes it impossible to focus on your work. All these negative emotions, they result in some degree of self-immobility. They stop you from fully engaging with life right now.
It's fascinating how deep this goes. The sources even connect physical symptoms back to choice. There's that story about the client with the chronic headache.
Oh, the 4-year headache, yes. Arrived like clockwork every morning, 6:45 a.m.
And the suggestion was she had unconsciously chosen the headaches, maybe to get sympathy or avoid certain things.
That was the hypothesis explored, and the strategy to test it was ingenious, really.
What did they do?
They asked her to try and move the headache, to use her thoughts to shift the sensation from the center of her forehead, say, to the side of her head. Just focus intently on relocating it.
Then did it work? Could she actually move the pain?
She could. She managed to shift its location just by choosing a different internal focus. Yeah. And by proving she could control where it was, she essentially proved she had control over the headache itself. It confirmed the choice element.
So she eventually stopped having them altogether.
Completely. She stopped choosing them. It's a powerful illustration of just how much control our minds can exert, even over physical sensations often tied to emotional distress. If we can manage that, then managing our everyday emotional state, well, it confirms that's a choice too, made right here, right now.
That headache story. It really drives home the power of the mind. If we can influence physical pain, what about something as core as our identity, our self-worth? Let's get into that. First, loving yourself. Where does the self-doubt even start? Because kids don't seem to have it.
That's exactly the point made in the source material. Children naturally start out believing they're wonderful, beautiful, important, capable. They have this inherent sense of worth.
They really do. Unshakable almost.
But then society starts sending messages, subtle ones, often not intentionally malicious, but they chip away at it.
Like what kind of messages?
Think about all the rules around manners. Always say please and thank you. Always ask permission. Stand up when an adult enters the room. Don't interrupt.
Standard politeness, right?
On the surface, yes. But the underlying message that gets internalized, especially when it's constant, can be Others are important. Your impulses, your needs are less important. Don't trust your own judgment. Check with someone else first. External validation becomes the measure.
And getting that foundation of self-worth solid is critical before you can really love others effectively, isn't it? How does this philosophy define true love for someone else?
It's a definition that demands a lot of autonomy. True love is described as the ability and the willingness to allow the people you care about to be exactly what they choose for themselves.
Without needing them to satisfy you?
Without any insistence that they satisfy you, meet your needs, or conform to your expectations. It's about appreciating them for who they are, on their own terms.
And you can only do that if you already love yourself. Why is that link so crucial?
Because if you don't have that solid core of self-worth, your love for others inevitably gets tangled up with neediness. Possession, control, manipulation even.
How so?
If you need someone else to behave a certain way for you to feel okay, to feel validated, then you're not really loving them freely. You're essentially using them to prop up your own shaky self-esteem. But if you're secure in yourself, you don't need them to be anything other than who they are.
Okay, and this is a huge point. We absolutely have to separate our self-worth, which is presented as a constant, a given, from our behavior, which can change.
This is where so many people get trapped. You make a mistake, you do something you regret, and immediately you jump to self-loathing. I'm terrible, I'm so stupid.
Right. You equate the action with your core value.
Exactly. But loathing yourself just leads to that immobilization we talked about. It paralyzes you, stops you from actually learning or fixing the situation. The self-mastering approaches acknowledge the error, learn from it, maybe make amends if needed, but never let that mistake define your fundamental worth as a person.
Your worth stays intact. Your behavior can be improved.
Precisely. Worth is constant, behavior is variable. Internalize that distinction.
And part of this self-love, then, is accepting the physical self, too. Warts and all, you might say, which is tough when we're constantly told otherwise.
Oh, the advertising industry thrives on creating shame about our natural selves, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Billions are spent making us feel bad about, well, being human. Body odor, sweat, natural functions.
The message is relentless. These things are embarrassing, offensive even. You need to cover them up, mask the real you with products to be acceptable, to be liked. It's a deeply insulting premise when you think about it.
The real you isn't good enough.
Basically, yes. There's a great, if slightly extreme example in the text, Frank. This 32-year-old guy who finds all bodily functions repulsive.
What was his deal?
Compulsively clean, demands absolute spotlessness from his family, can't stand his own body odors, has to shower before and immediately after intimacy. He's completely internalized this external cultural message that the natural body is somehow disgusting.
That's profound self-rejection, isn't it? Based entirely on outside rules.
It really is. True self-love means accepting the whole package, the messy, wonderful physical reality of being human, and rejecting those imposed cultural standards that push for artificiality over nature.
And this acceptance has to extend even further, right? To things completely outside our control, like the weather.
Or earthquakes, or the fact that rocks are hard. Fully functioning people, the sources argue, simply don't waste energy complaining about things they have zero control over.
Why not? What's wrong with a little complaining about the rain?
Because complaining is seen as the refuge of those who lack self-reliance. When you complain about the heat, what are you really saying? I'm upset because the universe isn't catering to my personal preferences right now.
Oh, laughs. Okay, put that way.
Acceptance without complaint about the unchangeable realities. That's a sign of self-mastery. Focus your energy where you actually can make a difference, which is primarily your own thoughts and actions.
Okay, so once you've built that foundation of self-worth, that self-acceptance, you're ready to tackle the next big erroneous zone, the need for approval from others.
Yes. And the key word here is need. Getting approval, someone saying good job or liking your idea, it feels nice, it's pleasurable.
Sure. Who doesn't like a compliment?
Exactly. It only becomes an erroneous zone, a problem, when that want turns into a desperate need.
What happens then?
If you need it, then the moment someone withholds it, criticizes you, disagrees with you, ignores you, you crumble. Or you immediately change your behavior, not because you genuinely want to, but purely to win back their approval.
You've basically handed over control of your self-worth to them.
You've given them a huge chunk of your identity. Their opinion becomes the determinant of how you feel about yourself.
And this need, it's something that's really drilled into us, isn't it? That underlying message. Don't trust yourself. Always check with someone else first.
Oh, look no further than our traditional education system. It's practically designed to instill approval-seeking. From the earliest grades, what do? You ask permission for everything. To speak, to leave the room. Then you write papers, not necessarily based on your own original, maybe risky thoughts, but often by quoting accepted authorities, referencing things you know the teacher will approve of.
You learn to play the game, please the authority figure.
You become terrified of disapproval because disapproval means bad grades, which feels like failure. The whole system can train you to constantly look outside yourself for validation, to measure up to external standards instead of developing and trusting your own internal compass.
So you graduate, maybe top of your class, but potentially terrified of actually thinking for yourself because you've spent years seeking that external well done.
You crave approval for psychological survival. But here's the kicker. In the real world, outside structured systems, you simply cannot please everyone. It's impossible.
Someone's always going to disagree or dislike what you do.
Pretty much. You've got roughly a 50-50 chance of disapproval anytime you state a strong opinion or take a significant action that goes against the grain. So, learning to function effectively without needing everyone's blessing is crucial for freedom.
Abraham Lincoln had a great perspective on this, dealing with constant, vicious criticism during the Civil War.
His attitude was incredibly internal. He basically said, look, if the end result shows I was right, all the criticism means nothing. But if the end result shows I was wrong, 10,000 angels swearing I was right won't make a difference.
Wow. That's pure internal locus of control.
Completely. It's about the outcome, the reality, judged by his own assessment, not the noise of external opinions along the way. It frees you from fighting countless little battles for validation.
So, practically speaking, how do we start embracing disapproval? Or at least not needing approval? The sources give some specific techniques, like practicing ignoring abuse.
Yes, the story of the colleague lecturing in Berlin. He's giving his talk, and someone in the audience starts heckling him, just laying into him with hostile, abusive comments.
How did he react? Most people will get defensive or angry.
His response was remarkable. He just paused, looked calmly at the heckler, said a simple, unbothered, okay, and then just continued his lecture.
Okay.
By refusing to engage, refusing to get defensive, he demonstrated powerfully that he wasn't going to let someone else's hostility dictate his emotional state or his assessment of his own worth. He wouldn't be drawn into that neurotic game of defending himself.
That takes incredible self-possession. What's another concrete strategy?
Getting rid of unnecessary apologies. We apologize constantly for minor things, often as a way of seeking reassurance.
How so? What's the hidden message in, say, oh, I'm so sorry I didn't mean to bump you?
Often it's less about the bump and more about seeking forgiveness, right? It can be a plea. Please tell me I'm still okay, even though I made this tiny error. Please don't disapprove of me.
You're asking for their validation to make yourself feel better.
Exactly. If you need someone else's forgiveness before you can let go of a mistake, you've handed them control over your feelings again. The alternative. Acknowledge it, fix it if necessary, learn from it if it's bigger, and move on without needing that external absolution. #tag3, freedom from the past and useless emotions.
Okay, so we've dealt with self-worth and approval. Now let's talk about the past. The source material calls it a bucket of ashes, which is such a vivid image. Yet we often feel chained to it, don't we? Through these labels we give ourselves.
My IMs, that's what the text calls them. I'm shy, I'm not good at math, I'm clumsy, I'm just not a leader. We wear these labels like name tags.
And we use them to explain our current behavior, right?
We do. And they're held firmly in place by these little neurotic rationalizations we tell ourselves. Things like, well, that's just me.
Or I've always been this way.
I can't help it. And the classic, it's just my nature.
What's so dangerous about those seemingly innocent phrases?
They are growth stoppers. Absolute killers of personal evolution. They function as psychological get-out-of-jail-free cards. If you say, I'm shy, well, that neatly excuses you from having to push yourself in social situations.
You avoid the effort and the risk.
Exactly. You avoid the hard work of learning new skills, like being more outgoing, and you avoid the potential pain of rejection if you try and fail. The I'm label becomes this comfortable, self-built prison cell.
And there's always a hidden benefit, a payoff, for holding on to these labels, isn't there? The example of Horace comes to mind, the guy who wanted to go to college.
Right. Horace, 46 years old, really has a desire to get a college education. But what does he tell himself?
I'm too old. I'm not smart enough.
Those are his IMs. And what's the payoff? He gets to avoid the actual doing of it. Applying, studying, facing the challenge, maybe feeling out of place, potentially not succeeding immediately.
The labels let him sidestep all that discomfort and risk.
He gets to stay safe in his current state, even though it means sacrificing something he genuinely wants. The label provides the justification for inaction.
So when Horace says, "I'm too old," he's effectively making a decision that sounds almost like giving up on growth in that area.
It's described as a death-like decision. You're essentially saying, on this topic, I am a finished product, I will never change. Which is the opposite of a vibrant, growing human being.
Every time you use an "I'm" to explain away behavior you actually dislike, you're reinforcing that static identity.
You're actively choosing to be finished rather than evolving.
This kind of avoidance, clinging to the past or fearing the future, it also fuels what the sources call the two most useless emotions imaginable: guilt and worry. Let's start with guilt. Defined as what?
Present moment immobilization over a past event. Feeling bad now about something that already happened.
And why is it considered so useless?
Because it achieves absolutely nothing productive. As the text bluntly puts it, no amount of guilt can ever change history. It's like trying to unscramble an egg. You can spend hours feeling miserable about it, but the past remains unchanged.
It's just wasted emotional energy in the present.
Completely. It's a psychological sinkhole.
Now, it's really important here to distinguish guilt from learning from mistakes. That's different, right?
Oh, absolutely crucial distinction. If you do something that has negative consequences, say you hurt someone unintentionally, learning from that involves understanding what happened, why it happened, and figuring out how to behave differently in the future. That's healthy. That's growth.
So learning looks forward.
Exactly. Guilt, on the other hand, keeps you stuck looking backward. It's being paralyzed now, feeling depressed, self-critical, remorseful in a non-productive way because of something that's already done and gone. Learning moves you forward. Guilt chains you to that bucket of ashes.
And guilt is such a powerful tool for manipulation, especially within families. That whole parental guilt trip thing?
It's one of the most common and unfortunately effective forms of emotional control. It creates this heavy burden of obligation, of indebtedness.
Like the classic lines, "After all, I sacrificed for you."
Or the martyr complex. I only stayed married to your father and mother because of you kids, implying you now owe them something huge.
Or even using illness as leverage. "You're making my blood pressure go up with your behavior."
These are all essentially psychological attacks designed to induce guilt. The goal is to keep the target compliant, feeling too indebted or too responsible for the parent's feelings to assert their own needs or independence, immobilized by manufactured guilt.
So if guilt immobilizes us by focusing on the past, worry does the same thing, but by focusing on the future. Worry is defined as present moment immobilization about a future event.
And the source material is incredibly direct about this. There is nothing to worry about, absolutely nothing.
Okay, that sounds wildly unrealistic to most people. How can you not worry?
It sounds impossible because our culture constantly tells us that worrying is a sign of caring. If you love your child, you worry about them. If you care about your job, you worry about losing it. If you love your partner, you worry about the relationship.
Of course I'm worried. It's only natural if you care. We hear that all the time.
Right. But this philosophy directly challenges that connection. It questions whether worry is actually a useful or necessary component of caring.
And the argument against worry is based on its effectiveness, or lack thereof.
Precisely. The core point is, not one single moment spent worrying will make the future outcome better. In fact, it makes the present worse.
How so?
Because you're using up the only time you actually have right now to feel anxious, stressed, and unhappy about something that hasn't happened yet and might never happen. You're squandering your present moment effectiveness.
And often, the thing we worry about doesn't even turn out that bad, does it?
Statistically, yes. Worry is often doubly wasteful. First, you suffer in the present. Second, the feared catastrophe frequently turns out to be minor, manageable, or sometimes, ironically, even opens the door to something better.
Like the story of Harold, the chronic worrier who was consumed with anxiety about losing his job.
He spent months, maybe years, in a state of dread, tying himself in knots. Did all that worry prevent him from eventually being laid off?
No, he still got laid off.
Exactly. His worry accomplished nothing except making his present moments miserable and probably affecting his health. And what happened next?
He was forced into action, found his footing, and actually landed a better, higher-paying job within just a few days.
Proving his anxiety was completely futile. It didn't protect him, didn't prepare him in any useful way. It just caused suffering.
Okay, so let's connect these two useless emotions. Guilt looking back, worry looking forward. What's the underlying psychological payoff for keeping them around? Why do we cling to them?
According to this perspective, they are both highly effective avoidance techniques. They allow you to dodge responsibility for taking action right now.
How does that work?
Guilt shifts the focus and the responsibility backward onto the unchangeable past. I feel so bad about what happened. I'm too upset, paralyzed to do anything constructive now. Worry shifts the focus and responsibility forward onto the unknown future. I'm so anxious about what might happen, I can't possibly focus on taking steps today.
So in both cases, you escape the present.
You escape the now. You avoid the discomfort, the effort, and the risk involved in actually changing yourself, your behavior, or your situation in the only moment you can to present. You're immobilized by things you can't control anyway, the past or the future, which conveniently excuses you from acting now. #TACFE meet action, convention, and emotional freedom.
Okay, so if the present is the only place we can actually act, then we have to talk about procrastination, that habit of putting things off. It needs to go now.
Procrastination is fundamentally avoiding today. It's a really clever form of self-deception, isn't it?
Awesome.
Because making the resolution to do something later, I'll definitely start that project tomorrow, I'll call them next week, feels productive. It temporarily eases the anxiety or discomfort of not doing it now. It becomes a substitute for actual action.
You trick yourself into thinking you've dealt with it because you have a plan for the future.
Exactly. But the underlying reason for procrastinating is usually fear. Fear of the task itself, fear of not doing it perfectly, fear of failure, fear of success even. The "I'll do it later" mantra is just a way to avoid confronting that fear right now.
And this tendency to avoid doing often leads people into a different role, right? The role of the critic.
Yes, that's a fascinating connection. If you're not actively doing, it's much easier and safer to sit back and analyze, evaluate, and criticize what others are doing.
You become an observer, a commentator, instead of a participant.
Precisely. Critics often use their analysis, which can sound very intelligent or insightful, as a way to feel superior or involved without taking any personal risk. It absolves them of responsibility for their own inaction. Well, I wouldn't have done it that way.
While the real doers, the people actually in the arena, they're too busy. The example used is someone like baseball legend Henry Aaron.
Right. Champions, people who are deeply engaged in producing, creating, performing. They simply don't have the time or inclination to sit around dissecting the flaws in others' efforts. They're focused on their own work.
Criticism becomes a form of immobilization, a way to feel engaged without risking vulnerability.
It's a defense mechanism. If you're immobilized by fear or procrastination, becoming a critic lets you maintain a sense of control or superiority.
And what about boredom? Is that connected to?
Absolutely. Boredom is presented not as a condition imposed by the environment, but as a choice. It's a direct spin-off of procrastination and inaction.
How is boredom a choice? It feels like something that happens to you when things are dull.
The argument is boredom is simply an inability or an unwillingness to use your present moments in a fulfilling way. When you procrastinate, you often choose to fill the now with, well, nothing much. Then you blame the situation. This town is boring. This lecture is dull.
But the town isn't boring. The lecture isn't inherently dull. You are experiencing boredom.
Exactly. You have the choice to engage your mind, to find something interesting, to start the task you've been avoiding, to think creatively. Boredom vanishes the instant you choose to act and engage with the present moment fully. It's an active choice, not a passive state.
Okay, moving from inaction to action, we also need to break free from the constraints of convention. There's that great term again. Masturbation.
Chuckles.
Yeah.
Yes, coined by the psychologist Albert Ellis, masturbation. It refers to living your life according to an endless list of externally imposed shoulds, musts, and oughts.
I must always be polite. I should go to that party even though I don't want to. I ought to feel grateful.
The world bombards us with these rules. Some are useful social conventions, sure, but when you blindly adhere to them, when they dictate your feelings and actions against your own inner sense, they create enormous strain, unnecessary unhappiness, because they rob you of your choice.
This ties directly into that idea of locus of control, doesn't it? Internal versus external.
Very much so. The sources suggest something like 75% of people operate primarily from an external locus of control.
Meaning they believe their feelings and circumstances are controlled by outside forces?
Yes. My boss made me angry. I had bad luck. The economy ruined my plans. They assign responsibility outward. True freedom, this philosophy argues, demands shifting to an internal locus.
Where you recognize that you, your thoughts, your choices are the primary drivers of your emotional state and your life's direction.
You are the one that controls. You take responsibility for your reactions, regardless of external events.
Lincoln seems to embody this again. His comment about not having a rigid policy he could always apply.
Right. He said he just tried to do what seemed like the best thing at the moment. He wasn't a slave to a pre-written rule book of shoulds. He trusted his judgment in the present. That's internal direction. That's autonomy.
And this masturbation, this adherence to shoulds, it gets reinforced by another trap. The neurotic need to always be right.
Oh, this causes so much conflict, especially in relationships. That desperate need for certainty, for your view to be validated as the correct one.
When a disagreement, say between partners, turns into a battle where one person must be proven right and the other wrong.
Communication just shuts down, doesn't it? It becomes a contest, not a collaboration or an understanding.
So the healthier perspective is
to view decisions and opinions not as inherently right or wrong in some absolute sense, but simply as choices that lead to different consequences. Then the discussion becomes about which consequences you prefer, which path makes more sense now, rather than a moral battle over who holds the objective truth.
Removing that need for rightness frees up decision-making, makes it less fraught.
Much less. It becomes pragmatic rather than ego-driven.
Now, if we take that right versus wrong idea and broaden it to fairness in the world, we hit the justice trap.
Yes, the belief that life should be fair and the emotional distress that comes when it inevitably isn't. The search for perfect justice and fairness is described as, well, mythological.
Why mythological? Surely we should strive for fairness.
Striving for fairness is one thing. Demanding it as a prerequisite for your own emotional well-being is another. The reality, if you just look around nature, history, even legal systems with pardons and plea bargains, is that injustice is a constant. Fairness is not a guaranteed operating principle of the universe.
The robin eats the worm. That's not fair to the worm.
Exactly. So the erroneous zone isn't wanting justice. It's choosing to become emotionally immobilized, outraged, bitter, depressed when the world fails to deliver the fairness you demand.
It's that phrase, it's not fair.
That slogan is seen as a hallmark of ineffective living. Because if you're constantly upset that someone else has more than you, or can do something you can't, or got away with something, you've given them control over your emotions. Your happiness now depends on the universe conforming to your personal definition of fair.
Which it rarely does.
Which it rarely does. So you're setting yourself up for perpetual frustration.
And this ties directly into jealousy, doesn't it? Jealousy is framed as a kind of demand for justice in relationships.
It really is. Jealousy is essentially demanding that someone else must love you or behave towards you in a specific way that you've decided is fair or right.
And when they don't meet that demand,
you feel wronged, betrayed, you cry, it isn't fair. But the root cause, according to this view, isn't the other person's behavior per se, it's your own lack of self-confidence.
No, so?
Because jealousy is entirely other-directed. You're making your sense of worth dependent on their actions. You're saying, I can only feel secure and loved if you act in this particular way that proves my value. It's outsourcing your self-esteem.
Like Helen in the source material, who obsessed after her husband's affair. Kept asking, where did I go wrong? Wasn't I good enough?
She was torturing herself by framing his independent choice entirely in terms of her own worth and a perceived injustice to her. She was demanding that his actions conform to a standard that would validate her.
Instead of realizing his choice was his own, driven by his own internal reasons, maybe completely unrelated to her inherent worth.
Exactly. The healthier, more independent perspective is recognizing that other people's choices are theirs. You can only feel that immobilizing sting of jealousy if you fundamentally believe their behavior is a reflection on your value.
Okay, one more major destructive emotion to tackle. Anger. The call here is farewell to anger.
Anger, like guilt and worry, is presented as purely a choice. It's a learned reaction to frustration. And severe anger is even described as a form of temporary insanity.
Temporary insanity, why?
Because you literally lose rational control over your behavior. You might scream, throw things, say things you deeply regret. You're not acting thoughtfully, you're reacting blindly.
Now, common advice is that expressing anger is better than bottling it up, right? Avoids ulcers and whatnot.
And the sources agree. Expressing it is generally healthier than suppression. If you have the anger, letting it out is better than letting it fester. But the ultimate goal, the most effective and healthiest stance, is not having the anger in the first place.
Why is eliminating it superior to just expressing it constructively?
Because anger, even expressed well, is fundamentally ineffective at creating positive change in others. In fact, it often backfires.
Wow.
Think about it. When you get angry at someone, especially repeatedly, what do they learn? They learn they can push your buttons. They learn they have the power to send you into an emotional state, a fit. Children figure this out very quickly with parents.
The angry person actually gives away their power.
Completely. You surrender control to the person or situation that's frustrating you. They dictate your emotional state.
And the underlying thought pattern behind anger has got to be that internal sentence.
If only you were more like me, or things shouldn't be this way. You have a rigid set of rules for how the world must operate, and when reality inevitably violates those rules, you choose anger as your response.
So what's the antidote? If not anger, then what?
Laughter. Choose laughter. They are psychologically incompatible.
You can't be genuinely furious and genuinely laughing at the same time.
Try it. It's impossible. Laughter immediately introduces perspective, distance, and lightheartedness. It allows for effective movement and problem solving, whereas anger just breeds more tension and immobilization. Find the absurdity. Choose amusement over fury.
Okay. So mastering all this self-worth, approval, past, useless emotions, anger, it all leads towards declaring our independence, psychological independence.
Yes. This means achieving total freedom from obligatory relationships. Relationships based on have to rather than want to.
Because dependency means vulnerability.
Huge vulnerability. If you need someone for validation, for financial support, for emotional stability, and that person leaves, changes, or dies, what happens? You risk collapsing. Your well-being is contingent on them. Dependency means you feel resentful if you have to do something in the relationship out of obligation rather than genuine desire. That's a sign it's not truly free.
This dependency dynamic often plays out dramatically in marriage crises, doesn't it? The classic scenario.
Right, where, say, one partner, often traditionally the wife, starts out in a more submissive, approval-seeking role. Then, maybe years later, she starts to grow, seeks more independence, maybe even encouraged by her partner initially.
Again.
Then the crisis hits. The partner who was comfortable in the dominant role, who perhaps enjoyed being needed, suddenly feels threatened by this newfound autonomy. Their own sense of control or superiority is challenged.
And they might try to pull the other person back into dependency.
Through manipulation, yes. Guilt trips. How can you do this to me after all I've done? Threats of leaving, of financial repercussions, maybe even developing convenient physical ailments? Or using the silent treatment, all tactics to regain control and force the partner back into the old dependent role.
The truly free person has to resist that pull, even when it's incredibly difficult.
They have to hold on to their autonomy, refuse to regress, even under immense emotional pressure.
So the ideal for any deep, healthy relationship, marriage, friendship, even parent-child, isn't fusion, but autonomy.
Minimal fusion, maximal autonomy, that's the goal described. Think of the mama bear in that old Disney nature film, Bear Country.
What does she do?
She taught her cubs everything they needed to survive, to be fiercely independent, and then she let them go. Completely. No strings attached, no guilt, no expectation that they owed her anything later.
Her job was to foster their independence.
Exactly. And that's the model for healthy relationships, allowing, even encouraging, separateness, putting, as Khalil Gibran said, spaces in your togetherness. That's where genuine love thrives, free from need and obligation. #TagV, Portrait of Freedom. Synthesis for the learner.
Okay, we've covered a lot of ground. We've talked about dismantling these erroneous zones, the need for approval, the chains of the past, guilt, worry, anger, dependency. So let's try and paint a picture. What does the person who has successfully eliminated these zones actually look like? What are the characteristics of this fully functioning, self-mastering individual?
Well, first and foremost, they are masters of living in the present moment. They are fundamentally non-worriers. They refuse to waste their now agonizing about the future or endlessly replaying the past.
They're not waiting for happiness later.
Not at all. They find joy, satisfaction, engagement now. They savor the present experience, whatever it is. They don't postpone living until some condition is met. Happiness is gathered in the moment.
Okay, what else?
Second, They operate from a deeply internal locus of control. They are almost entirely free from needing external approval. What other people think of their choices, their lifestyle, their opinions, it just doesn't carry significant weight for them.
So they're not trying to please everyone.
Far from it. This often means they can be quite blunt, quite honest. They don't feel the need to constantly soften their message or package it in ways designed purely to gain approval. They're not afraid to be different, to stand out, because their self-worth isn't tied to fitting in.
They remember Lincoln's perspective on criticism.
Exactly. It only matters if they internally agree with it. External noise is just noise.
Third characteristic.
They are defined by creativity and action. They are doers, not watchers or critics. They don't necessarily look to manuals or outside experts to tell them how to solve a problem or live their life.
They trust their own ingenuity.
Yes. They approach challenges in their own unique, imaginative ways. They might be organized or they might seem chaotic, but they're not bound by rigid systems or the right way to do things. Organization is a tool, if useful, not a mandate. They're busy doing.
And maybe the most liberating trait of all. They're not afraid of failure.
They are fundamentally fearless of failure because they understand that failure is usually just someone else's opinion, someone else's judgment based on a particular outcome.
They don't equate failing at a task with being a failure as a person.
Never. Their self-worth remains constant, remember. So because the outcome of an enterprise doesn't define their value, they're free to try almost anything, simply because it looks fun or interesting or challenging. There isn't that crippling fear of, what if I mess up? Or what will people think? They're released from that pressure to always do your best in a way that implies judgment. They just do.
So this whole journey we've been discussing, it's really about a fundamental transformation in perspective, isn't it?
Yeah.
The goal isn't so much chasing after happiness.
Exactly. It's about living in such a way, taking responsibility, choosing your thoughts, living presently, acting authentically, that happiness becomes the natural result, the inevitable payoff, you might say.
It reminds me of that realization the historian Will Durant had later in his life. He talked about searching for happiness everywhere.
Right. He said he looked for it in knowledge and found disillusionment. He looked for it in travel, found weariness, looked for it in wealth, found discord. He was looking at all the grand places.
And where did he finally find the clue?
He said it came to him when he relaxed, stopped searching so hard, and simply observed a quiet, everyday moment. A man coming home, softly kissing his wife, while their child slept peacefully nearby after playing.
And the realization was?
That every normal function of life holds some delight. The joy wasn't in the extraordinary pursuit, but in the appreciation of the ordinary, the present, the authentic functions of just being. That awareness is the core of it.
The capacity for joy is already here, right now, in choosing how we engage with this moment.
That's the empowering truth, the choice to start eliminating these erroneous zones, the guilt, the worry, the shoulds, the need for approval. It's available to you right now in this present moment. It starts with abandoning the belief that your feelings just happen to you.
And embracing the reality that you are the one choosing them. You are the orchestrator.
That is the first and maybe the most important step towards true self-mastery.
And it's a step anyone can choose to take. We hope this deep dive has given you some tools and perhaps some inspiration to begin that journey.